Only Everton, Davo. 2 games into this season, 2 losses, 0 goals scored. We're just a bloody footballing charity. We are Make-A-Wish. We are not serious people. Here's my question. Can we be relegated 5 games into the season? Because that's how I'm feeling.
From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford and from the crap part of Southern California, it's the Men in Blazers video podcast presented by the GFOPs at Camarena, the most awarded tequila.
Like Hurricane Hillary, how are you and all of our viewers in LA holding up? Hurricanes, earthquakes, God, my heart is with you.
I think it got downgraded to a tropical storm by the time it hit, Rog. It may just be a tropical depression at this point, which I have after this weekend of football. It's all fine. A little bit of mud, a little bit of water damage, but other than that, everything okay. I didn't even feel the earthquake, Rog. Didn't even feel it.
Essentially, the way you make it sound, it just sounds like a normal Saturday afternoon in Burnley.
Pretty much.
But Dave, in that case, I've got to say, I'm sorry about England. It's never coming home, is it?
A great achievement to make a final, but the reality is in any tournament, I know it's from playing some tournaments myself, when you lose, you lose. It doesn't particularly matter whether you lose in the group stages, the last 16, the quarters, the semis, or the finals. It's never a good feeling.
Oh, I went on Brendan Hunt and Rebecca Lowe's podcast yesterday, and commiserated with Rebecca about it not coming home. And I think we agreed that it did come close to the front door. They thought about ringing the bell, and just decided to go out for some tapas instead. I mean, what was fascinating, I broadcast again live on Twitch with Sam Lewis, and she thought that England, having been in a major final before, the Euros, which they won, they would have that big game experience. I mean, Spain, their rise has been so far, so quick. I mean, they had not won a knockout game in the World Cup before this one. And we thought that would swing it for England. Ultimately, I was back in England on Thursday for the day, seeing my dad. And I was shocked with joy and wonder to see just how much the nation had risen up behind the Lionesses. And the media was just all in. Even the BBC News, which is not tabloidy, was almost all about the Lionesses, their campaign. Will Serena Wiegman, the manager, be the next England national team men's manager? It was wallpaper coverage. And you almost saw in that first half the immense build-up, the chance for legacy, the wall-to-wall coverage, almost too much pressure. And that's what made them oddly nervous in that first half.
Spain was certainly the better team. Spain was certainly the technically superior footballers. They felt faster. They felt more organized. Despite their terrible relationship with their coach, they felt better coached, at least better organized. And England's still playing a form of football, some might call it a little bit brutal, quite physical, on the counter, unable to keep possession. This reminds you a lot of sort of England men's teams of yore. And I think the hope is, certainly for me, Rog, is that looking at England women's football, it's still also in its infancy in terms of vis-a-vis the men's game. I think you'll see a nation of girls and young women watching that, a diverse and multicultural England, and with the ability to change the way that the game is played, just as has happened on the men's side and with our younger men's team. So I'm looking forward to the evolution of women's soccer everywhere, Rog, but also especially in my home country of England.
I admire the English national women's team. They really are the best face of the nation. And the Spanish won, which is an incredible testament to elite club football for women. Barcelona investing elite training from youth, that pathway all the way to the first team, and then that carrying through to the national team. Lindsay Horan, who plays at Lyon and is really our only US international playing in Europe, she came on my show during the World Cup and told me that she can't believe the tactical and technical abilities of European training, of elite European club sides. She warned, when you look at that interview now, she was warning the rest of us about what was about to go down, how much more complex, nuanced it is than the American style of football. And the Spanish win was also proof of one of the great truths of football. As we've discussed it, Dave, you mentioned how much the great rift between the players, many of the players, and the coach Vilda, who is seen as a nepotistic hire, that they begged their federation to get rid of this atavistic, nepotistic, control freak of a coach they weren't listened to. And we've talked about this before. Few things motivate elite players, Davo. We always say this, more than spite, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, teams need spite. Football federations need nepotism, Rog. They don't know how to exist or operate without nepotism.
We're motivating our players. Nepotism will unite the collective. I mean, there's almost a hatred of their quite awful, misogynistic Spanish federation. That, by the way, that president, I mean, I don't need to go into it now, but the president kissing their star players on the mouth, grabbing his crotch in the royal box during the game, just awful people attracted to the beautiful game of football over. I'm sick of talking about it. But ultimately, put the nepotistic coach in, be a disgusting, misogynistic federation. Spite is the ultimate human motivator. For the United States, a quick one. I mean, I've broken this down a lot, pod after pod, and find yesterday's. It's on YouTube now with Sam Lewis, where we break down the final. I do think the concern should be that the Spanish team plays football that is levels above anything that we've seen before in terms of ball control, vision, technical ability. There was a tweet yesterday. Julie Fowdy put it out. A fan very generously and rather nostalgically tweeted at Julie Fowdy during the game. This Spanish team reminds me of the 1999ers. And Julie Fowdy wrote, very kind, but we have never moved the ball like Spain does. And we've got to remember, Spain did all of this. Tim Ream came on our Twitch yesterday and said, God, Spain are doing this while they hate their coach and they're fighting their own federation. Just imagine what they can do when both of those things, please God, are corrected. They also lacked a handful of their squad who refused to play. Just imagine how good they will be, how high the bar, how high the challenge will be when they get a bloody good coach and when the president of their federation is not kissing his players full on the mouth post-victory in the most sexual, assaulty of ways. The women's game soaring despite the arseholes that run these federations. Davo, I broke the whole game. Some incredible capper to this Women's World Cup transforming journey. The ticket sales, the global television numbers. I mean, this tournament is surging into juggernaut status right now, right?
Yeah, look, what has happened, in some ways, it's the most underreported still story in sport, which is what is happening with women's sports in general and with women's soccer in particular in terms of the absolutely dominant TV numbers. I mean, dominant. Everybody will write pages about some new Netflix drama. The numbers of a new Netflix drama compared to the number of people watching the US women's team or this World Cup, Women's World Cup final, it is staggering. This is approaching the level of the biggest sporting events in the world. And this is happening in the women's game, which was so derided for so long, and for the reason being that, no one's going to want to watch that on television. And it is completely and utterly disproven that.
Yeah, I mean, David, I said at the beginning of the tournament, I had to beg in 2011 ESPN to allow you and me to cover
off the ball.
They allowed us to. They paid for us to do one podcast a week for the 2011. I mean, I had to bloody beg. They were like, "Why would anyone want to listen to this? How far we have come." Again, we've seen it with the Men's World Cup before 1982. The Men's World Cup wasn't the commercial juggernaut that we now know it as. 1982 really was the commercial threshold. I feel that this 2023 version will be seen as the commercial transformation, ticket sales, global viewing, the commercial might that will now pour in, and the game will be all the better for it. Two details to add before we move to the Premier League. Huge respect to England's Lucy Bronze. Incredible. We put it on our Instagram if you want to see this. During the medal ceremony, she snubbed FIFA president Gianni Infantino, who put out his hand. She put her hand behind her back, the man who 48 hours earlier in his press conference had told women's footballers that to create change, all they need to do is to, quote, convince us men what we have to do, in the most patronising and controlling of ways. And the image of her pulling her arm back is amazing. It's testament that you can be a winner even after you lose a game. Lucy Bronze, God, I really admire you as a human being. Her middle name is Tough. Call your kids what you want them to be in life. I admire her so greatly. And we have to finish by just remarking on Spain's Olga Carmona, the winning goal scorer, 23-year-old from Seville, who learned after the game in which she'd scored the winning goal that made her team world champions, that her father, the man who'd introduced her to football, had actually passed away before the match. Olga, posted a beautiful eulogy to her dad on Instagram. She said that the day was her best day of her life and the worst day of her life. She said, without knowing it, I had my star before the game started. I know that you gave me the strength to achieve something unique. I know that you were watching me tonight and that you're proud of me. Rest in peace, Dad. And Olga's 23. She scored that winning goal that made her team world champions, and then found out the darkest of news, the most devastating of news, the extremes of life, Dave. And we wish her strength and love at this time of loss and hope that her father's memory will be a blessing.
Yeah, beautiful. Roger, my 12-year-old son who got up at 3 a.m, along with my godson and goddaughter, 14 and 22, which is great things of the game. My son told me that and choked up similarly to you when he told me the story about that. Tragic, put sport into perspective, but what a remarkable human story. Okay, before we get to the lesser game of men's football, Rog, I would be remiss in not wishing you happy Roy Day. That's right, it is Roy Hodgson Day here at Men in Blazers World Headquarters as we release the latest episode of the Men in Blazers television show out into the world with the Crystal Palace manager. You talk his decision to return last year, why he stayed again this season, and life lessons learned in football.
Oh, Dave, we've got a lot to get into in this podcast, so I'll just say this, that there's part of this conversation with Roy Hodgson where he just, without blinking, without smiling, just being himself, he quotes the Dalai Lama. And I'm pretty sure I reached a more advanced state of enlightenment than I ever have in that moment. Thank you, Roy, you incredible human being.
Probably considered the Dalai Lama for assistant manager, Rog. Sounds trippy.
Yeah, he looks at the Dalai Lama and goes, he's a young gun, but I think he'll come out okay.
That interview is available for viewers right now, along with your Mauricio Pochettino interview. Both of those are on Peacock. Catch that while he's still a manager at Chelsea, along with the last 2 seasons of the Men in Blazers television show. Also this week, a new episode of your digital series, This Week in the Messiverse. It's coming out on our YouTube page. And talking of Messi and his trip to Music City over the weekend, can we get a toast, Rogelio?
Oh, I want to raise my third first Bud Light of the day to Lionel Messi, who this weekend won the 44th trophy of his career. Oh, he's never won the Florida Cup, haters. And the one he had no doubt dreamed of a little kid he does now own, the League's Cup, clipping a very game Nashville on penalties, who were led by our friend Dax McCarty. What an incredible human being Dax is. Messi scored a total banger to open the scoring, then classily and humbly took off his captain's armband before the trophy celebration, put it on DeAndre Yedlin, the former captain, and allowed him to lift the first trinket into Miami history. Really humble, really classy, really a reminder that football's a team game. GFOP at Smug Fecundity wrote of the way Messi is just blasting in goal after goal. 10 goals in 7 games. Messi going to start making the game more challenging for himself, like Larry Bird, shooting left-handed for a game. Can we have him so he can only shoot right foot from outside the box and see what happens? Let's just savour every single second. A lot of people saying Messi embarrassing MLS level defending. I don't care. He's embarrassed every defender he's ever played against. Let's just savour every moment of this demigod, relishing in his football once again, doing it on our shores. It's a joy and it's a wonder. And as MLS returns, and Miami are still in last place, 12 points off a playoff place, watching him try and chip out of that deep rough like a little Rosario Houdini will be majestic. I love all of this. And regarding Messi and those late night Saturday kickoffs, I will just say this. There's so much football and so many big stories happening with transfers. Just even I can't keep up. Massive moves around the Star Wars Cantina of World Football happening so bloody quickly. We almost need like some kind of daily, a short bloody pod to keep up, stay connected so that we can keep following this spigot of information that's happening around the game we love.
To the football, starting with Tottenham 2, Manchester United 0. 2 potential technical area saviours and change agents clash in a battle between Australian Tony Soprano and Low Country Walter White. And this one was chaos, beautiful chaos, in the first 45, with each side going close before Pap Matassar blasted one into the roof of the net to start the second half. Spurs then sealed the victory 2 minutes from time with Ivan Perisic's cross finding Ben Davies, no relation, whose effort went off Lisandro Martinez, past Andre Onana, and in. And with that, Spurs get the first win of the Ange ball era, a fair dinkum victory if there ever was one.
A true test of progress and mettle, really, for both teams. United had escaped the first weekend with a 1-0 victory, undeservedly, against Wolves. They looked so direly undercooked in the process. Tottenham, Ange ball, first game at home, huge warm welcome, massive tifo in his honour, really lovely sight, really lovely sound. And that tifo did lead to Spurs fans being armed with balled up bits of cardboard to throw at every Manchester United corner taker. But I digress, because the game was just delicious from the off. Bissouma, Ange Postecoglou has somehow found Bissouma's on switch, and he drives Tottenham forward. United, so much more awake and connected than when slumbering through that Wolves 1-0 win. Rashford crackling. It was really lovely to watch the opening exchanges. Bruno Fernandes blew the best chance of a free header from a yard out. And for Spurs, Porro thrashed the bar and Sarr clipped the rebound off a deflection onto the post. I was like, if this is Ange ball, sign me up. Because Spurs, Davo, they didn't score, but they just created pulse-raising moments of football that give you life, which I think to Ange is what it's all about.
Yeah, and the whole game, that first half, was pulse-raising in general. It was a fantastic, sometimes you need two opposing styles to make a really great fight. And this was just both teams, I would say, because I know Man United are going to come in for some criticism later. But first half, both teams playing pretty beautiful football and going at each other. But it was the backbone that Spurs were showing in midfield. That's what I really like. Ange will be talked about his buccaneering, down the wings play and all that kind of stuff. But it was the backbone, and you mentioned Bissouma, who was just outstanding in that half. And it was the backbone that I just love seeing.
Goalless at halftime, but what a complex, fascinating encounter. And 4 minutes into the second half, first blood Spurs, Kulusevski springing down the right, his cross deflected. Matar Sarr, right place, right time, creeping on the right-hand side of Casemiro to absolutely thunder his first goal on just his third Premier League start. And United, credit them, they did come right back at them. God bless Anthony. He's almost like a human meme of a player, slapping against the post. Vicario, couple of stunning saves, one off a Casemiro header. Spurs, though, so confident going forward. Destiny, Udogie, riveting to watch. Bissouma street balling at times, just surging with confidence. These are players, David, they look like they know that they've got the manager's confidence, and so they just have complete freedom to express themselves.
Yeah, I think a little bit with Bissouma as well, that he had a difficult first season and with injuries, and it takes time to settle into a new club and do those things. But yes, let's give Ange the credit. He was amazing. Sarr, frankly, quite apart from that amazing finish, was just rangy and brilliant in this game. This prototypical new kind of player who can play everywhere, inside, outside, front, back, middle, and just take your breath away all over the place. You mentioned the goalie. I mean, I was watching a couple of those saves, Roger. I was thinking, well, Lloris wouldn't have saved those.
Yes. And you know what? He looked slightly dodgy and nervy in that first game. But this was joyous. He too feeding off the crowd. And Spurs kept coming. James Maddison, another bloke just reveling in charging around the park, hurting his opponents by all means necessary. Dude did end up the game with a foot injury, which is a nagging worry for Spurs fans. But here, he swung an arrow, starting the attack. Perisic played a lethally weighted ball. Ben Davies swung with Lisandro Martinez, regrettably didn't, redirecting it into his own goal, 2-0. And that was it, Davo. Spurs' first win against United in over 6 years. And Ange, to me, so far, the feel-good story of the season. But he said, when I interviewed him, and he said to everybody, he said at Celtic when he arrived, and it was true there, it takes time for my ideas to take hold. So, big picture, do we just revel in it, enjoy it, or should we caution about overreacting and say, let's give some time here by anointing him as a Spurs special one?
I think we've just got to do our annual reminder here. We are 2 games into a 38-game season. That reduces to 1/19th. When we were kids, when did they first publish the league table, Roger?
After 5 games into the season.
They didn't even publish a table in the newspapers until 5 games into the season.
Point being, they were like, it's ridiculous to worry about where you are in the table when there's only been 6 points up for grabs.
Yeah. So
having said that,
yeah, we're all in on Tottenham and Big Ange. Everything's good. No, but they, the things that he wanted to see happen have happened. And with Harry Kane leaving, we're not even discussing Harry Kane not being there when we're analysing a Tottenham game against Man United. I mean, it's staggering.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you got to say, Richarlison struggling in the Harry Kane role, if we're being honest. 1 goal since his arrival. There are weaknesses. There are vulnerabilities. If you want me to discuss Harry Kane, I'll just say the one dark side for Spurs this season, if I was a Spurs fan, will be, oh my God, Daniel Levy still has the pile of Harry Kane money to ruin everything with, as he did with Gareth Bale. But, I do believe there is going to be a process where Premier League managers learn how to adjust to this buccaneering fare, and it's actually going to be more Ange's adjustment to the adjustments in the medium term, which will define this season. But this is joy. Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United to come for Spurs. Good Lord, it would be nice, I will say, after that to see Spurs soaring high again, because I just loved hearing Ange talk post-game about taking a moment in the centre circle after the win and just soaking in the atmosphere, the moment with the Spurs fans. He said, you want to feel that moment, because I've always said that to me, I love what football does to people in these moments. I love that side of the game. For me, that moment is about feeling blessed about what I'm doing and what we're doing. Just a moment now. And then I was thinking about next week. God bless. Football needs more of that conscious self-reflection about what's really important. But for United, Davo, real sense of false start to the season. They wanted Harry Kane. They wanted Victor Osimhen. They got neither. Struggling to find a sharp edge or any kind of drive in key moments. That win against Wolves that felt like a loss, followed by the real beating against Tottenham. With Rashford leaving the field, flinging his shin pads down in anger. Mason Mount looking lost, still trying to find his right foothold positionally. And Bruno fractious and agitated. Just a lot of problem solving that still needs to be done.
Yeah, if you just look at their travel schedule over pre-season, I know it was in the US. They didn't go to Australia or anywhere, but their travel schedule across America was absolutely exhausting. And they do look a little bit leggy. They felt outrun at Tottenham. It was only when Jadon Sancho came on that you saw a player who could actually inject pace into the game for United. Certainly, they're just looking a little bit, slow is not the word, but they're looking beaten on the run, where Man United usually cut you in part with their incisiveness. They just didn't seem to be able to do that in this game in the second half.
Yeah, former United legend and broadcasting curmudgeon Roy Keane on Sky Sports delivered the most withering of post-match insults. He said Manchester United are the new Spurs. Absolutely desperate. Second half, weak, no leadership, gave bad goals away. United, it's easy to play against United. And I will say the squad seems to be in perpetual state of rebuilding. A squad that huge money's been spent on, but still has significant holes evident. No true idea still of what they want to be. One last note on United. The club announced this morning, as we sat down to pod, that Mason Greenwood will no longer play for United. The statement was United and Greenwood have mutually agreed that his future will be away from Manchester United following the conclusion of the club's internal investigation. What it means is they will not bring back the player after, honestly, from the outside, a truly bumbling 6-month, quote, internal investigation. A team who need goals and strikers so desperately now that they attempted to lay down a public relations pathway to have Greenwood rejoin. Greenwood being their former star boy, who's not played for United since he was arrested January 2022 after a fairly, to be candid, gruesome recording. And awful images were released on social media of, quote, an alleged sexual attack. And charges were dropped because the girl who he abused became pregnant with Greenwood's kid. She dropped the charges, so he wasn't found guilty of a crime. But it's one of those situations, Davo, where you're obviously not innocent either, despite the hundreds of keyboard warriors who charge in at times like this to drop a lot of, well, she's forgiven him, so why shouldn't we? Which is, of course, utter nonsense. Going back to an abuser is something that happens all the time for victims of abuse. And United were in a bind here, legally, commercially, footballingly. I think we can say they took the right decision morally, belatedly. I think it took Adam Crafton of The Athletic to really expose just the outcry, the backlash that was happening within the club. You kind of wonder if it was just a third string left back, they would have got rid of him a heartbeat ago, right, David?
Well, it's also the other key words hidden behind mutual agreement is that as part of that mutual agreement and the settlement that is made to Mason Greenwood, he then agrees not to sue the club, which he would have been entitled to sue the club for breach of contract. And you felt that because of the size of that contract, that Manchester United were very worried about that too. And that played into this whole thing as well. Ultimately, probably through in a very wrong way, they have got to the right decision. But I suppose many people at Manchester United are probably happy to have this behind them.
To better days ahead for all.
Okay, West Ham 3, Chelsea 1. A bonkers big smoke derby played out in the Sunday afternoon East London sunshine. The Irons took the lead via a 7th minute Naif Agar header. Chelsea drew level in the 28th minute via Carney Chukwuemeka. His crossover, whoosh, and finish that sent Thomas Souček back to Prague. Enzo then squandered a great chance from the penalty spot to give Chelsea the lead at halftime. And from there, it was a nightmare for Chelsea. It was all Irons, with Mikel Antonio finishing with the heat of 1,000 CONCACAFs and Lucas Paqueta, this game's arch-villain, slotting home a penalty. A big win for your mate David Moyes' Irons as they follow up a draw at Bournemouth with this win. Chelsea, meanwhile, still winless. Despite $17 billion of transfer money spent, still winless to start the season, Rog.
I'm beginning, Dave, I don't know about you, to think that Todd Burley's scouting department is just like, it's just him flicking through Fabrizio Romano's tweets and just trying to buy any player mentioned in them.
He's your mate. You tell me. I have no idea what's going on.
All I can tell you is that it's been some unprecedented week, even by Chelsea's unprecedented spending / week by week strategy. This team, who've had so many big weeks in the course of the last year, the arrival of Romeo Lavia from Southampton for $74 million, which just took the week spending on midfielders to $223 million.
Casual.
After the arrival, casual, of record British buy Caicedo, who will be the first Chelsea player to wear the vaunted number 25 jersey after Gianfranco Zola gave his personal blessing to do so. In the Todd Burley era, Dave, Chelsea have signed 28 players for $1.2 billion. You can make the case that they are using it to hellbent chase down Manchester City after giving them such a head start talent-wise. And I do believe, you understand this better than I do, I believe they've done it by, and this is simplifying it, but only by a little, by keeping wages as low as possible, by investing in young players. So you cap the wage costs, it's not the transfer fees, which actually bloat a team's expenditure. And then they amortize, or essentially spread the transfer fees, which sound enormous, but they spread them over
incredibly long contracts.
6 or 7 years to balance out the balance sheet. It's a unique strategy. There's talk about the Premier League closing that loophole and preventing this extreme amortization. But it does also feel there's an element of the sugar rush to the plan, Dave. Pep Guardiola said midweek, Manchester City would, quote, be killed if they spent the same as Chelsea. Paul Pochettino is already having to stamp out fires by saying to his players, if you don't want to fight for your place and feel part of the team, the door is open. Watching this for you, are you like, yes, we got another one? Or are you like, wow, I've never seen this before. I don't know what to make of it. Where are you mentally in this squad build?
Oh, no, I think it's absolutely insane and crazy. I don't buy I understand the strategy. I understand the low salaries. I understand the amortization. I actually think there's nothing wrong with amortization. All businesses do it. You couldn't grow a company unless you amortize costs, but it requires you making excellent decisions, if not perfect decisions. We should also say that Chelsea's net spend is not going to be, we always, report on the overall spend, not on the net spend. And the net spend, they're probably still not going to lead the league this season in their net spend because of everything that's gone. Everything that's come in, the number of players, through this whole thing, the fire sale of players is unbelievable. And by the way, not such a bad fire when you're getting the amount of money that people are paying for Chelsea's players, which is some of it driven by Saudi Arabia, but most of it not, which is incredible. But it works, that strategy, if in one transfer window or two transfer windows, you pick the perfect players to sign on to those incredibly long-term contracts. Or, let's be kinder, if the majority of the decisions you make are perfect. But we're not even seeing any of that. And the reality is, Rog, is that the difference between a player in the Premier League who you pay 100 million for versus a player who you pay 20 million for is not, they're not 5 times better. They're not 5 times more likely to get you the win. It's not exponential in that way. These are differences in degree. They're tiny little differences in degree. And that's what happened. West Ham, on paper, nowhere near as good as Chelsea. Certainly not worth the amount of money in the transfer market that the Chelsea players are. But it doesn't matter in a game of football, in a game of sport, because the collective can go and beat the individuals.
You know how Brendan Rodgers used to, after Liverpool lost games under his tenure, he'd say, well, we won the XG. I think Chelsea fans listening, if you want a bright side out of this, West Ham do not amortise as well as you do.
No,
you won
exactly.
the amortisation game. You won the creative accounting. I mean, why do we watch football if not for creative accounting?
Champions of amortisation.
That's
You'll
what we never sing that.
that.
Chelsea looking for a sponsor, an H&R Block, if you are available. It's just creative taxing. They're not a football club.
PwC, Ernst & Young, any of the big
They are
four
the
will
most
take you.
creative accountants in not just in the world of sports, the most creative accounting just in the world. I think I've just made an incredible marriage there. But to the game, all of you new shiny Chelsea players. Caicedo on the bench. Lavia arrived too late to make the squad. And the key moment in the first half was one of the new boys. Unfortunately, he was playing for West Ham. James Ward-Prowse took him all of 7 minutes. The ultimate dead ball team. West Ham score so many goals from dead balls. They've now added the ultimate dead ball deliverer. I think he's had 24 assists from set pieces, second most since his debut behind only Christian Eriksen. Floated in a corner to the head of Naif, who leapt over a rather flat-footed Conor Gallagher. It's almost like watching a Moroccan Vince Carter dunk on a Frederick Weiss, Davo. What were your emotions in that moment?
Yeah, when we should say the starting lineup for Chelsea, unchanged from last week, other than the forced change of Reece James, who tragically has picked up another injury in training to the hamstring. We have no idea how long he is out. Reece James,
they're talking about months rather than weeks. It's
Reece
so
James,
bloody brutal.
Our captain, our best player, and actually our best defender from St. Pieces with apologies to Thiago Silva. And in that right back position from the corner, who covers that zone, it's Conor Gallagher, who had a pretty terrible game throughout, and he lost his man. Naive defending, allowed himself to be pushed off too easily.
I think he was thinking about his tax deductions. He was thinking about his own creative accounting. It's very hard.
He might be thinking that the fact that he's a major target of West Ham, off David Moyes, who might be rethinking it after that performance. And fantastic. Knife got on the end of it, and great header. And by the way, there had been a corner just a few minutes before where a similar thing had happened. And Chelsea unable to defend it. And that's what happens. It doesn't matter how many billions you have, how many billions you spend. Set piece defending against a decently taken set piece, that's gonna kill you.
From that moment on, the game really became about Chelsea's response as West Ham went into a David Moyes shell, inviting Chelsea onto them, trying to repel anybody 30 yards outside a goal. Jackson pierced them, runs so well. Finishes so badly, but runs so well. Recycled ball, slot, and Chukwuemeka shimmied past Souček, almost ended the man, and then slapped home, like an English Nigerian Linda Caicedo, a goal carved really from the vision of Todd Boehly's Chelsea trademark: young, lean, talent-soaked, and incredibly hungry.
Well, not really carved from the Todd Boehly. This was a transitional Todd Boehly, because the amount he spent on Chukwuemeka, I think at the time we thought, wow, that's a lot for a young player, but it's nothing like what he's spending later.
He offered more. In negotiation, he offered more.
This is a player...
He said, I'll give you 30. And they were like, okay, we'll take it. What about 40? And they're like, no, we'll take 30.
But Chukwuemeka looked very good in pre-season, looked very good last week. I think this is a name that we're going to be uttering a lot this season. He looked so good in the early parts of this game. He's rangy. We talked about Sarr in the Tottenham game. He has that same kind of modern ability, that ranginess, that size, and also that speed in combination. Tremendous ball skill. He absolutely skinned Souček. It was a fantastic finish as well. 1-1 and very fair. Chelsea, as you said, just entering the final third at will, and West Ham allowing them to do it. And from that point, it looked like, there's no way Chelsea are going to lose this game.
Yes, they could look like they could just run at West Ham, but fleet of foot, pace of thought, West Ham conceded a penalty. Raz clipped, surging into the edge of the penalty area. Who stepped up? It was Enzo bloody Fernandez. I don't know, David, do Chelsea decide who's going to take penalty? They all look at their price tags, and the most expensive one has to step up to the spot.
Yeah, the one with the most expensive price tag with the lowest number. I think that was that's the equation.
He never looked confident, did he? Bless him.
I am very interested. Pochettino didn't really address it in the post-match, but I'm very interested to hear, like, is he the ordained Chelsea penalty taker? Is that a thing? You cannot believe that you wouldn't.
I think he'd taken 5 in his career before this.
You wouldn't go. I mean, to give it to Jackson, let him get off the mark, in his first game. But Enzo never looked confident. Credit West Ham keeper, a fantastic, within the bounds of the law, left foot on the line. He's so far forward, and cuts down the angle to a not particularly well taken penalty.
Yeah, it's terrible.
There you go. Terrible. It's great.
Grateful Areola in goal. God, that lad, if he can survive 4th, 5th, 6th grade schoolyards, Areola, he can survive anything. That bloke, penalty from Fernandez, never going to challenge him. And for West Ham, second half, more of the same, knowing Chelsea, who seem to be in complete control, but blunt control, would live by young, inexperienced football and ultimately die by young, inexperienced football. And so it came to pass. Disasi, we loved him last week. A tentative touch in midfield, sprung upon by James Ward-Prowse, set forth just a surging Mikel Antonio. Is there any other kind? CONCACAF thunder. And then he just lashed it through the now desperately covering Disasi, his 62nd Premier League goal. As many as David Beckham, Jamaica's Mikel Antonio. Not bad. Release the bubbles. Dave, I was watching, I was like, somehow, some Chelsea fan somewhere is going to be still like, this is all Pulisic's fault.
No, it was desperate. You said desperate defending by Disasi. I would say it was half-assed defending by Disasi on a needless yellow card from the first half. And yeah, he didn't have a good game either. But this is what a player like Mikel Antonio, this is what a team like West Ham can do to you. And Chelsea were just so naive. Pochettino is going to want this game back badly because a very, very good manager, a very, very good coach, he got out-funked and out-managed by Moyes from right after that penalty taken. The bad start to the second half, the ball constantly in. Gallagher suddenly became the playmaker as West Ham adjusted and took Enzo out of the game. All over the field, just bad decisions being made.
And then it came to pass. The insertion of Caicedo, the most expensive player ever to take the field at an English club, $146 million worth of game changer. Mm-hmm. As he trotted on, I think the value of Chelsea's midfield became comparable to Micronesia's annual GDP. And to make what would proceed to go down even more remarkable, West Ham were down to 10 men. Naif, stupid, with his flying in tackle. But the closest Chelsea got to equalising was Mudryk falling over with a girl at his mercy, bless. And a coup de grace was the penalty. Given away, of course, it had to be. Didn't it have to be? He's less an unfit record transfer. He's more like Chekhov's gun entering that field. And he left it as Natalie Imbruglia, cold and shame, lying naked on the floor, gave away the penalty in the 94th minute, bringing down Emerson in the embers of the game. I was like, well played, Premier League script writers. Well played.
Yeah, and look, and that wasn't Caicedo's worst action in the game. He had giveaways. He failed to make passes. He looked, I mean, as you generously said, unfit. He hasn't played a lot of games in pre-season. He's, obviously...
He's got tax issues he's got to think through with his accountant now after all of that.
Transfer.
It's all tax.
I know, but which Chelsea sponsor... Who could he go to for tax advice when all of them are potential sponsors of Chelsea Football Club? It is it was a terrible debut. As he said, not the debut I expected. It was a terrible debut. All over, and I don't know what Pochettino really, he must have known what his relative fitness was. You're 2-1 down and you bring on a defensive midfielder. He's not a playmaker of any sort. It was a terrible end of the game, but it
was a brilliant, well played Premier League script writers. For
any supporter of any team other than Chelsea, I mean, this couldn't be better. This is wonderful. even for me, who's been critical of Todd Boehly's transfer policy, there was part of me that was sort of enjoying it at the same time.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's just insanity.
It is. It's like if lovers of ancient Greek theatre, the concept of nemesis hubris, just of strapping on wax wings and then going directly for the sun. It was amazing. And I have to say, in another nuanced narrative flourish by the Premier League writers, it was Paqueta who took the penalty, ran away screaming his little heart out like he just bet the over, God bless him. As Ian Dart once told us, you cannot write scripts like this. GFOP at Coles27 DM'd us on Insta. Just think about this. Paqueta had been offered 100 million to go to City, tons of rumours. No doubt hurts morale in camp. Hammers then get a penalty in extra time. All that gambling intrigue surrounding Paqueta. Who does Moyes elect to take it? No one but the man himself. Great coaching, great message to the team, great message to the player, strong result that says all the right things. At El Guiopo tweeted us, Burley's going to panic buy David Moyes for 150 million. But Q Pochettino,
we'll buy Souček.
Surrounded by bubbles of bewilderment. I love that, by the way. Pochettino, just sitting there, that shot of him just surrounded by children's bubbles. It just must be, what am I doing here? He knows that he has to win from day one at Chelsea debut. He told that to me when he sat down in Philadelphia. That was his message. 1 draw, 1 win, over $1 billion spent. The Blues have now lost 4 consecutive London derbies for the first time in their Premier League history. Luton next Friday should be a welcome reset, but can we get a calm, sage, no panic mood check from you, Michael Davis?
I think Chelsea, on the whole, played pretty good football in this game, notwithstanding their inability to finish. This was more like 21-22 Chelsea, who managed to somehow lose games despite dominance, than it was 22-23 Chelsea. They looked good at times in this game, and I imagine on another day, and another penalty taker makes that, and they go 2-1 up, they don't lose this game, and they might well win it. They look good enough, and I think Pochettino post-game took some positives out of that. But mark my words, this was a setback. This was a setback, and this is the first challenge, right? This was a very good preseason. We've not mentioned, I think Chelsea won the Florida Cup and the Premier League Cup. These are 2 massive trophies, Rog. And then a very good performance against Liverpool at home last week, a game they were expected to lose, that they found a way to draw. But this is the first time that Pochettino is dealing with a setback. And how you react to a setback often is the mark of what you're going to be. So I think
defines you.
Yeah. So I think Friday against Luton, is that a London derby? Is it not a London derby? Unsure. That's going to be a very, very big game for the manager and these players, and let's see how they respond. We'll know more after that.
I think it's a London adjacent airport area derby.
It is. I think that's about right.
I'm willing to be corrected.
Okay, Manchester City 1, Newcastle 0. New money pays a visit to old new money in this Premier League sovereign wealth proxy war. And the difference in this one, a 31st minute perfectly placed mid-range jumper from Julian Alvarez, all set up by Pep's Stockport Pinocchio, Phil Foden, who pulled the strings throughout this game. And in the end, this was a football match that proved the old adage, you come at the Pep, you best not miss.
You're right. It was new money, quadruple seekers versus new money, aspirational dreamers, Abu Dhabi against Saudi Arabia. Really the inversion of the rumble in the jungle. This is Gulf states owning England now. A great tweet from The Guardian's Barney Renee, which summed up just the surreal reality surrounding this game. English Sport Radio going into this one reporting on sadly huge surges in petrol prices, and Barney wrote, they were talking about how Newcastle fans, for example, will pay far more for away day drives this season. Is this sophisticated satire? Rone asked. Oil prices are rising because Saudi Arabia wants them to. Those car journeys are paying for Alexander Isak. Enjoy! It's just a madness. And, also fascinating, Pep begging the City fans ahead of this one to lift the team who were already shattered by the schedule 2 days in. Super Cup victory midweek on penalties against Sevilla, which had necessitated a jaunt to Greece. Broke up training schedule for a squad already beset by injuries. The crappy news, Kevin De Bruyne out for 4 or 5 months with a first-day hamstring pull. 32-year-old really ran himself into the ground in delivering that treble last season. An achievement we were reminded of before kickoff when a huge treble winners banner, which covered nearly the entire field before kickoff, a statement of intent as much as a celebration. This being a ground at which Newcastle had lost 16, drawn 2, won none in its existence. But we tuned in wondering if they could follow up last week's bare-arse thrashing of Aston Villa by catching Manchester City at a moment of perceived vulnerability. That's what it felt like. Cue this oddly late Saturday night, crisp floodlight game. And City had all the ball. Eddie Howe bravely ceded possession from the off, trusting his players' ability to repel, to choose their moment. City had 84% possession in the first 50 minutes. They knocked the ball around like a teen who's discovered they can twist a cherry stem in their mouth and tie a knot with it with their tongue. All that was missing was the final killer KDB ball to pick out that last pass to Haaland. Kovacic and Foden both trying, off by millimetres. Phil Foden everywhere in this game, Davo, just fluidly charging all over the field in the most hybrid of positions. He was magnificent to watch.
Absolutely. But Pep is like some kind of modern Inquisition torturer. And first of all, he puts the setting up to 5 and thinks, okay, can they handle the heat at 5? Let's see how they handle that. And Newcastle did a very good job of repelling at 5. He turns it up to 6. Let's see how they do at 6. And then he goes up to 7. Newcastle still fending them off. And then he's just like, okay, sod it. I'm going to go up to 9. He took them all the way up to 9. And after just attack after attack after attack after attack, sometimes Grealish standing on the left side of the penalty area for minutes with the ball between his feet, just trying to pick out which of the 17, Man City players he wants to go and pass the ball to. And after one of those periods of 9-level torture, finally Julian Alvarez gets the ball and knocks it into the net.
The way you describe it, you make it seem like playing City is like an appearance on Hot Ones where Sean Evans just gives you the hottest wings first. And that's really what it was like for Newcastle. City just kept citying. Foden just so eager to make this his season. Finally got to the nerve centre. Newcastle collapsed. The ball was fed to Alvarez alone, and he just thrashed that ball. It was an arrow. Nick Pope, I think, got a hand to it, but couldn't keep it out. I don't know if anyone not named Mary Earps could have kept that ball out, David.
Yeah, no, and we've seen this a few goals in the Premier League this year. Chukwuemeka's the same thing. Is that when you hit the ball really hard, it's difficult for keepers to save it. Keepers are so good at saving the sort of, the placed ball. But when you put your laces through it, it's still very tough for keepers to save it, even if they get a hand to it. Newcastle
now had to go for it. They turned up their press, but it was always just lesser. Tonali playing suddenly like a man who's been on the booze at Wetherspoons every night this week, which he probably has been. They came out stronger in the second half. They enforced real attacking intent. But City's game entered at the same time one of their weird kind of coasting second half spells, and those two realities combined. Haaland had a couple of chances that he chose to try and nutmeg the defender with placement rather than power, rolled them just wide, and in key moments Gvardiol just came up like a giant to repel Callum Wilson single-handedly. And when Almiron started to cut City open on the right, Jack Grealish just decided, I'm going to make this a one-man mission to shut down the man that he once memed down. One shot on goal all night for Newcastle. And that, to me, was the statistic of the night. An incredible tribute to Manchester City, but to their backline, that a striker with the true quality of Isak was reduced to the role of a mere spectator. That Toon, who scored 5 last week, were just repelled. That final ball still a work in progress for them. City turning a massive game ultimately into a short week travel nightmare, lack of practice, routine win that they will feel incredible about, having lost their most important player. It's almost as if, Davo, nothing bothers Pep.
Well, everything bothers Pep. Which is why
Yes.
nothing bothers Pep.
Yes.
Because everything bothers him, because he's on every single detail. You mentioned this as salute to their back line. Absolutely a salute to their back line. But before that, you mentioned Jack Grealish's defending of Miggy Almiron. He's turned Jack Grealish, he's turned him into a defender, a really, really good Premier League defender.
A two-way destroyer of souls.
I know. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And his focus on detail, and when some might find it harsh that I'd say Pochettino would want that game back and would want the game back against West Ham. But it's Pochettino, you look at Pep and the level of detail in every single decision in the game and every single moment. Poch is just very early in his tenure, but that's what you have to be in the Premier League these days if you're going to be a champion.
I mean, it is insane. I was watching him at the end. He spent 10 minutes post-victory storming around the field, whipping up the crowd like a kind of Klopp way. I mean, Pep truly is the greatest showman. You can tell he couldn't stand doing a single second of it, but this was the first time City had played at home since lifting the treble. I think it's 17 straight wins at the Etihad now. And he knew strategically, he needed to get the fans to peak levels of excitement, as he knows down the course of the season he's going to need them. So he kind of walked around with contempt and distaste, but doing maniacal Pep moves with the crowd. And it was incredible to witness. This is a man who has a plan for every single bloody detail. For Newcastle, no shame in defeat by 1 goal to the treble holders. Pep Guardiola paid Eddie Howe's team the ultimate respect, I think, post-game, when he said how he'd had to change the tactics to clog the midfield, prevent an open game, in which, quote, he said, a transition game, they, meaning Newcastle, will destroy us. And credit to Akanji, who did clog up so bloody much. Toon should draw strength from this, honestly, in a way, as they head to Liverpool next weekend and then Brighton after that, with confidence that I would say should still be surging.
Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 1. Michael B. Jordan's Bournemouth come out like Adonis Creed, taking a 3rd-minute lead behind Antoine Semenya's thunderous strike, an incredible celly in which he did some kind of inverse flip. But from that point on, the Cherries looked more like Wallace from The Wire, well-intentioned but condemned to their fate. An acrobatic Luis Diaz effort, a Mo Salah penalty rebound, and a Diogo Jota's poacher's goal see Jurgen Klopp's crew cruise at Anfield.
A game that was 9-0 last season. Scotty Parker's public execution. Bournemouth had never won at Anfield in 9 previous games. New coach Andoni Iraola strolled in and quite a fetching polka dot shirt around that sweater combo. What do you make of it, David?
It was a new look for a Premier League manager.
I thought it was fresh. I liked it. It says, I'm not trying too hard, but yes, I do have my own signature style. And maybe it will catch on. The 41-year-old, the latest coach off that immense Basque manager production line of Bielsa and Disciple, who looks, if you've watched it, he looks just like the awful husband in Bad Sisters, which kind of freaks me out a little bit. But he'd already had this team playing fearless football. He's already got them playing football in his image with no respect, leaving huge numbers up top when in possession, pressing like dervishes when out of it. Liverpool were fast asleep. They were not prepared for this whatsoever, despite the best efforts of their fan faithful, who just gave them an epic first home game of the season welcome. Conceded a goal that was ruled offside within the first minute, didn't take that as a warning shot, and proceeded to wilt. They just couldn't live with Bournemouth's high press in the early exchanges. Liverpool, lost boy Solanke was the one causing the mayhem. Semenyo preyed on the slip, thrashed the ball past a still fast asleep Alisson. Long-time GFOP and Cherries fan at Binky Marsh 29 was in heaven. He texted us and said, Bournemouth were doing all of this without Tyler Adams. We will be unstoppable with him in the team. Yes, over the weekend, Bournemouth announced the acquisition of my mate Tyler Adams, $25 million, 5-year deal. Can't wait for Tyler to recover from his hamstring injury. Have Wappingers Falls, New York's finest. Charge around that field for American-owned Cherries, under data-driven Las Vegas Golden Knights owner Bill Foley. It's going to be a fascinating home for him, David.
Yes, good. A lot of very good athletic players around him. Their young manager will have learned a lot from this game, but they were really impressive in that, opening 20 minutes of the game. I thought they were fantastic.
They were, and I think his major note to himself is, English football lasts for 90 minutes. Because
exactly. Well, no, 110 minutes these days.
Yeah, I mean, they play at such helter-skelter pace in such an open style. It's impossible to maintain that. And granted, it took Liverpool an eternity to come to life. It was unclear, honestly, for a spell at what their vision was moving forward. They honestly look like a Premier League US women's national team with each of their star players just taking it in turns to do one-on-one efforts to just run kamikaze style at the back line. But just when the crowd started to become fractious, just when you could see a possibility for the players to drown in a sense of collective panic, a moment of improvised genius, lifeline them back into the game. 26-minute. Anfield was actually standing to applaud. This was beautiful. Michael Jones, the 26-year-old Everton fan, the construction worker who tragically died in an accident at Everton's new stadium, Bramley-Moore dot last week. Moment of true class off the field. Anfield stood to just say, we all in Liverpool, we are one footballing family. We feel your pain. They were standing to applaud. And that beautiful moment off the field was matched by really a moment of wonder on it. It was Jota's cross deflected, but Luis Diaz able to somehow, I still don't know how he did this. And the commentator, it was so acrobatic what he did. It almost didn't register. He flicked it up behind him and then arced his body to poke it home on the volley. It was like, it was so bloody needed for Liverpool, but it was like a Bobby Firmino trick goal tribute.
Yeah, it was the deflection that changed his mind about what he was going to do. And in an instant, like an elite tennis player reacting to a net cord. And it wasn't just he changed his plan and came up with something so out of left field, like out of the far reaches of anybody's toolbox. It was an amazing move, the way he flicked it up. The flick up was phenomenal in its own right. I would have just stood up and applauded the flick up.
Yes.
But then the fact that he managed
to contort his body. If you don't like me for my flick-ups.
Yeah, he then managed to contort his body into a position to be able to score. Stand and cheer just the contortion of the body, but then managed to put it into the net at speed. I mean, unbelievable.
It was stunning. I'd love to, you thought that he just changed his mind midway. You know what? I'm not going to blast this wildly over the bar. I'm going to do some other crap. That turnaround reflected in the team. Salah blasting home his own penalty rebound in the 36th minute. After Soberslai had touched or been breathed upon in the box by Joe Rothwell. There was a moment of challenge. McAllister sent off quite harshly for a mistimed tackle on Ryan Christie. Liverpool have appealed the red, as they should do. But honestly, if I was a Liverpool fan, I would look at how the 10 barely treated going down in numbers as much of a speed bump, because within 4 minutes, shot from the quite excellent Soberslai was parried poorly by Neto. Jota dunked it home. Liverpool also saw a debut for new Japanese bulldog midfielder Endo. Still needed 2 fine saves from Alisson down the stretch, but a different class between these two teams. Liverpool, the scoreline may have been a relief. So many questions remain. Liverpool, honestly, they look primed to me to be like the old Liverpool, the version of Klopp's Liverpool that score boatloads, but can be vulnerable in key moments. Almost like that pre-Verge arrival Klopp team, David. They almost look like that again.
And it was the nature of that giveaway from Van Dijk earlier into midfield that was just sort of worrying, and that conceded the goal. So yeah, I think Liverpool fans, will be very happy how this game ended. Very happy. I mean, as you're right, Szoboszlai, what a signing he looks like. He looks like class. Instant Premier League, top player. And, wonderful for them to get both Jota off the mark and Diaz off the mark. Diaz scored against Chelsea, but his second goal of the season. That's really good for them. Bournemouth, yes, impressive in this game. I think they're going to learn a lot. And 2 games in, Liverpool feeling okay, but feeling a little bit vulnerable at the back to me.
Ultimately, 3 points, Kate. Season off to a winning start after Chelsea had pretty well wrecked every transfer plan, and they trip to Newcastle next weekend that could make a statement of intent one way or the other, for good or for bad.
You say wrecked every transfer plan. I think Liverpool fans are jumping up into life
Saved
after watching Caicedo's performance on the weekend. Nottingham Forest 2, Sheffield United 1. The best Matt in an episode of Friday Night Lights since Saracen. We're talking Matt Turner's debut at the City Ground. A thrilling game of football to kick off the weekend as Taiwo Awoni and Gustavo Hamer goals had things tied at 1 until the 88th minute, when that Kiwi sledgehammer Chris Wood busted out a paintbrush and crafted an artistic header that glanced into the net to send the Forest faithful into bedlam. A big win for Forest after falling to Arsenal last week, Rog.
Massive congratulations to Matt Turner. Pair of big saves down the stretch, shut down Traoré. This is a gentleman who left Arsenal, where he could have stayed, stayed comfortably, but he wanted to chase his dream of playing in Premier League games, and it was magnificent to witness. Bergen County Buffon looking so confident out there, treating shots like routine fly balls to left and screaming, in my imagination anyway, at every attacker. This didn't happen, but stay with me here. I just like the idea of him just doing these saves and then screaming, "What exit you from, dog?" For the Blades, I feel for them. I really do. Losing their 2 best players, heart and their brain. Sander Berge gone to Burnley, and Dai to Marseille. I think it's going to be a long season amidst true financial challenges, but it is good to have them and their greasy chip butty song back in our loving arms. Their manager, Paul Heckingbottom, possibly the most English name manager that's ever Englished. Just like we always say, David, we don't have American coach names in England, like we don't have Dabo Swinneys or Kirby Smarts in England. I think it's safe to say American college coaching will never have a Paul Heckingbottom, will they?
No, they probably won't.
English surnames, it's why we watch.
Wolves 1, Brighton 4, the Premier League's hippest second-hand store who continue to turn up style gem after style gem, even as bigger brands raid their wardrobe time and time again. Goals from Caro Mitoma, oh my word, what a player, and Purvis Estupinian, as well as a second-half Solly March double do the business here, Rog. I know we're just 238s into the season. As I've said, it reduces to 119th. And don't look now, Rog, but Brighton are top of the table.
Had said before this one, Brighton have to find a new way to play football without Caicedo. And that way was essentially give Mitoma the ball in his own half and let him dribble through the entire Wolves backline. The last Wolves defender actually tried to pull Mitoma down, but failed. I mean, his strength is immense as well as his ability to dribble. It's like watching Maradona against England in 1986. Diego Mitoma Donna, just a breathtaking professor of dribbling in on goal, audacity, confidence, technique, strength. I mean, that dude, it's like a Murakami novel in football boots. Brilliance, bordering on absurdity. That goal, when you watch it, Davo, it's kind of described as the kind of goal we laugh about Lionel Messi scoring in MLS, right?
Yeah, I mean, he looks about 14 years old, for one. But it's what you see sometimes when you see an elite player play against your kids' team. And an elite player can dribble through all of them. But this is an elite player playing against elite defenders. And it was just remarkable the way he carved them open.
Brighton, 2 games, 2 wins, 8 goals scored, no Caicedo, no McAllister, no Sanchez, just keep on keeping on with delirious football and hope that they can hold on to their next highly coveted pieces. Mitoma, Incensio, Estupiñán. Their fans finished off this game by singing deliriously, "We are top of the league, we're top of the league," and they are all that's bloody good about football. West Ham up next, then a delicious clash against Newcastle, which should give us a clearer sense of their true weight class in the wake.
Absolutely. Fulham 0, Brentford 3, a West London derby in which the Bees bludgeoned the Cottagers after Fulham's smash and grab at your place last weekend to start the season. That Premier League king of calm, Yohan Wissa, put Thomas Frank's mob up 1-0 before half-time, and then the second half turned when, in an act of anti-Men in Blazers media network refereeing, Tim Reed was sent off for the softest of soft challenges inside the box. Brian and Mbeumo converted the penalty and added a third to seal a comprehensive victory.
Fulham fans, before kick-off, were all like, chew Mitro. As Mitrovic, the big-bodied goal hope, lolloped to pick up $64 million of Saudi money, a move, lols, announced by Al Hilal in-game, one which made Fulham cash-rich and striker-poor, and we expected Brentford to be the latter, stuck on goal-scoring without talisman Ivan Toney out till January for gambling infractions. But talk about cometh the hour, cometh the striking duo, sensational Bees, double act, Brian and Mbeumo and Wissa, both together, directly involved in every Brentford goal scored in Tony's absence, 5 goals between them. And I loved what Wissa said about what Thomas Frank has instructed them. He said, they're looking for me to score goals, help the team to defend hard and to attack hard. I can play right back, I can play goalkeeper, I don't care. I just want to help the team. That is the true collective spirit. Honestly, I adore it just as much as I hate what happened to Tim Ream, who was sent off after picking up a second yellow card for shoulder to shoulder in the penalty area. Second yellow and a penalty, not even a free kick, I got to tell you, on the Thunderdome fields of St. Louis. Tim still came on our Twitch during the Women's World Cup final and talked about it. It was beautiful to debrief. All I can say, I can't wait to hear Tim on our podcast, The American Dream, this week. He'll talk about the emotions he experienced in this one. Find that show, The American Dream, on the MIB Media Network, where all good podcasts can be found. That one, you actually need to Google it, subscribe individually to find it, but it's beautiful. So do so now, please. Courage.
I mean, one thing that I do think is remarkable about this early season, Rog, there have been many adjustments in the way that referees are calling various acts in the game, including goalkeeper actions and, certain kinds of challenges in and around the penalty area. But the inconsistency of the calls this season, I'm usually a defender of the refs, but this has been quite notable. Some shocking inconsistency.
Hashtag free Tim Ream.
Okay, we need to delay talking about Everton even further. Luton versus Burnley, a clash of one of the Premier League's most repeat customers against a first-time shopper. That was postponed at the Hatters Ground, Kenilworth Road, as it continues to undergo extensive improvement in order to bring it up to code for the Premier League in terms of broadcaster and media requirements. And another game that is yet to kick off, the aforementioned Roy Hodgson and his Crystal Palace. They're hosting Arsenal in Monday Night Football. Can't wait for that game. That will be wrapping up right around the time this podcast is released.
Yeah, 2 games in, injury worries already for Arteta. Jurriën Timber, cruel agony of suffering an ACL. 50 minutes into his first game for the club, out for an indefinite time. Zinchenko cannot return quickly enough. And for Paris, Elise out of a hamstring twinge. But his agreement to resign for Palace for at least the next season anyway was celebrated, honestly, by every Palace fan as if they'd won a trophy. And they had, in a way. I do feel that he and Eze are Premier League life themselves.
That photograph that Steve Parish released of him with Elise at the point that he signed, I wrote to Steve immediately, as I've known you a very, very long time, but that is, and I've seen you very, very happy in various circumstances. That is the happiest I've ever seen you.
Yes. It's worth looking at just for Elise's bucket hat.
Here we go, Rog. You ready?
I'm very ready. David, I'm dead in already. There's no fear.
Aston Villa 4, Everton 0. Don't know what to say, really. It was comprehensive, complete, and like so many of your nightmares, it involves Scottish wildman John McGinn. The floor, I cede to you, my friend.
Sean Dyche, after the game, he referred to this match as his, quote, day of woes, which just sounds like the most incredible Johnny Cash new album, in which the man in black just sings an extended, mournful version of Spirit of the Blues. I can't tell you how debilitating it was to walk out of an England loss in a World Cup final after amping with Sam Lewis. So I didn't get out until 9:30, and I walked into my living room where my youngest kid and my oldest kid were watching Everton play together. Everton already 2-0 down, playing, according to my oldest son, Samson, the worst football I have ever seen us play. And then he added, and I've seen us have that season where we lost to every newly promoted side. I just walked into that room at the very moment beautiful Dominic Calvert-Lewin was being helped off the field. A man whose return from quote, ever injury led to him limping off with a broken cheekbone after a collision with Emi Martinez. Not just injured again, but his good looks taking a dent. Which arguably was one of his greatest assets at this point. Still the best looking man in the league.
He might be better looking with a broken cheek, Rog.
Oh, he's just no longer perfect. Aston Villa, by the way, who lost 5-1 in their opening game. I mean, they just turned around. It was like watching the victim just rise up and become just a victimizer. They tonked us merely by virtue of, being able to play a game called football. Bailey, Diaby, McGinn were just levels clear. Perhaps the player that hurt me the most was Digne, a player who used to ride with us. We had him, lost him, and are now fielding 38-year-old Ashley Young in his place. That changed, Davo, from Digne, a French elite footballer, to scrubbing around with the great late Ashley Young. If that isn't a symbol of all that's wrong at a place where nothing is right, I don't know what is.
I'm surprised. I thought Ashley Young was a little older than 38. It's good to know that he's still got a couple more years left in him in Everton terms. Yeah, look.
Funny when you say that. I think he was 2 years behind Roy Hodgson in school.
Yeah.
I don't know what that makes him.
Exactly. Look, I think that the Calvert-Lewin, yes, they were already down at that point, but the Calvert-Lewin injury, this was a game where it was a day of woes. Everything went wrong for Everton on this day.
It was like I saw the goals that we'd leaked at halftime, and it was like watching a low-ranked tennis player beating themselves with just unforced error after unforced error. The Villa opener, fluid, exploiting space, so cohesive. The second, God, I watched Manchester United's Onana take out a Wolves attacker last week, penalty not given, totally took him out. But Everton, well, Everton, aren't we? Jordan Pickford does something very similar to Ollie Watkins, penalty given.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can say Pickford's was a penalty. You can make that case, absolutely. All we want is some consistency.
Yeah, agreed.
Douglas Luiz, no mistake. Could have been 3 or 4-0 by half-time, to be honest. And it was within minutes of the second half. First, Iwobi limped off with a hammy. Mopé then had to come on to soil the field. God, we have no luck. And then, off a simple throw-in, Michael Keane bollocksed up. David, we had Connor Cody. We had Yerry Mina. We let them both go. We kept that man, who was simply a broken toy and has been for a long time. Bailey wrapped the ball deliriously through Pickford's legs. It would get worse. Ashley Young, who I've just Googled it, I think he has grandchildren in the same class as Tim Ream, off our own throw-in, flung the ball into space behind.
Don't throw it that hard at Michael Keane. What's he going to do with it?
What was he doing?
Yeah.
But it was behind him. It was into space behind our backline to welcome. That's the only way you can think about it. It was, John Duran, 19-year-old Colombian, played at the Chicago. Welcome, John, to the Premier League. Man, we're just a bloody footballing charity. First touch, I think he scored. I mean, that's what we are. We are Make-A-Wish. We are not serious people. Only Everton, Davo, 2 games into this season, 2 losses, 0 goals scored. I think that's for the first time in 68 years we've not scored in our first 2 games. We have Wolves, Sheffield United, then Arsenal in our next 3. 2 relegation rivals and then Arsenal. Here's my question. Can we be relegated 5 games into the season? Because that's how I'm feeling.
No, look, I think the Wolves game is a big game because I think this year you've got to sort of reckon that 2 of the promoted teams are going to go down, plus 1 team in there. And Wolves and Everton right now probably would be the first with their hands up saying, me sir, me sir. So I think the Wolves game is huge, and Everton have got to find something. They've conceded a few, haven't scored yet, and but Wolves don't look that good either. They looked great last week. They didn't look so good this week.
It must be one of the earliest 6-point relegation battles of all time. Look, I've come to realise this weekend. We are less a football team, Everton Football Club. We are more the sporting incarnation of Police Academy 7. I said this to Brendan Hunt yesterday before we started taping. Police Academy 7, if you watch that movie, which I don't encourage you to, everyone in the cast is just bored and exhausted at that point. No one wants to be there. I mean, they are just going through the motions. Everybody. They're just doing bits. The man who makes the funny noises is like, oh, okay. Like just doing fart noises at that point. Blue Oyster Bar scenes are like unspooling. Michael Keane is making hapless mistakes and still being selected. Tick, tick, tick. Oh. At WP Montgomery gave me this line from Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which helped and then didn't help at all. It was written that I should be loyal to the nightmare of my choice. I'm going to get that tattooed on my forearm. Everton are so dispirited, so downtrodden. Will there be 3 teams worse than us, David? Is that humanly possible? I've got a feeling Sean Dyche is going to be fired and then the Spanish women's coach is going to get appointed. We're going to get Vilda, David. We're going to get Vilda. Yeah, his PowerPoint's that good. And it is not okay. It is all not okay.
So 1, I had no idea that Michael Keane was in Police Academy 7. I need to go and rewatch that just for that reason. 2,
he really tries.
2, Sean Dyche was the one in this game is cutting to him on the sideline, even as the team went down 3-0, 4-0. He seemed, of course he was bothered by it, but he still seemed to be coaching the game as though it was 0-0. There didn't seem that sort of, this is a guy who we've said he would win the Premier League knife fight series in a bracket against other Premier League managers.
Yeah, he's that hard.
It seemed that he wasn't really up for the knife fight. That was the thing that most worried me.
Do you know how Arsenal 2004 were the Invincibles?
Yeah.
20 years later, I think Everton 2023-24 will be known forever as the Vincibles. I'm going to get a sweatshirt made.
You think it could be a perfect season?
Well, yes, I really do.
38
perfectly
losses.
Imperfect. Yes.
Is that what you're going for?
Tell me where the draws are going to come from. I'd bite your arm off for a draw. The Invincibles.
before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers. We've reached a new level of darkness. There's nowhere else to go now after the 38-loss season. We're powered by Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. As we mentioned, there's a new episode of the Men in Blazers show on Peacock tonight. And with that, can we get a toast, Rock Elio?
Oh, we certainly can, Dave. I want to raise this Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass to two gents. Harry Kane, who had an assist within 4 minutes and a debut goal in Bayern's 4-0 opening day start over Werder Bremen. Massive day for Harry Kane, for the Bundesliga, and perhaps most importantly of all, for Skechers. Or is that maybe they're Der Skechers, German listeners? Harry's just signed a lifetime contract, crazy man, with the Sketchies. And after the game, Kane marvelled at the atmosphere in Germany and the singing and the fireworks, the pyrotechnics, the energy, which is the Bundesliga's unique selling point. Next up, Augsburg. It's honestly magnificent to watch him revel in his football again. I wish the same this afternoon to Christian Pulisic, who kicks off his Serie A campaign with Milan at Bologna. I sat down with Christian midweek to talk about this fresh start. And honestly, I've not seen Christian this relaxed, this happy since I first filmed with him as a 17-year-old back in the Dortmund days. You can find the Christian Pulisic interview on our YouTube page, along with a Serie A preview, all the American guys previewed with James Horncastle, the incredible human being, to Christian, to Milan, to all the American players looking to surge in Serie A, Serie USA this season. To all of you, courage.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that match. Okay, as you stated, Rog, that Pulisic interview is up on our YouTube right now. Go find it and subscribe. There are so many interviews, so much original content, so many video versions of podcasts on our YouTube right now, including this one. You can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at Embassy Davis, at Rog Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at Embassy Davis on Facebook, Men in Blazers, Twitch, twitch.tv, Men in Blazers. Great job on the Women's World Cup, Rog. Amazing work. Also,
Sam
at
Lewis.
TikTok, look for it at Men in Blazers. This weekend, we posted a goal from the Ukrainian Premier League that may be the most confounding football highlight of all time. It's hard to see who is trying to score or what the hell is even happening. Head to TikTok, follow at Men in Blazers and check it out. You can always email at meninblazers@gmail.com. We love and cherish getting your emails. Venderpunk Rog.
War Pig!
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balls win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balls lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Dave.
I love you, Roger.
Love you, the Vincibles. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.